Hi guys, hold on for a second. Before we proceed to the video, I have something very important to tell you. Professor Jon V. Kofas has published his new book in collaboration with Little French Media, and the title of the book is Neoliberalism, Inequality, and Authoritarianism. This book details how neoliberalism impacts the geopolitical economy in the 21st century. You can buy it from Amazon and the link is in the description. Thank you. Now let's proceed to the video.
Hello, everyone. This is just a teaser, an introduction, basically, to a video session on corporate welfare and social welfare. Social welfare has been around for a long time. The genesis of it actually was roughly a bit more than 400 years ago in England. But one could argue that the old bread and circuses approach to appeasing the masses, going back to the early Roman Empire, was another form of social welfare. The uh, corporate welfare aspect of it, of course, is more recent. Um, it was especially associated with, and it still is, with the neoliberal model of political economy, which started it was experimented in Chile under the auspices of the United States government, the IMF, in the 1970s, after the CIA overthrew the duly elected president of Chile, Salvador Allende, and his successor was a military officer, Augusto Pinochet. It was under the Augusto Pinochet military dictatorship that neoliberalism was tested, which of course gives you an idea of what kind of model this would be. Obviously, conducive more to authoritarianism than to an open society, to a democratic society. Neoliberalism basically is private. It entails a lot. I've done many videos on neoliberalism. It entails privatization of state operations, uh, government subsidies, and this is where corporate welfare comes in, to corporations, reduction of taxes. It also means major deregulation and tariff reductions, movement of capital, free movement of capital across national borders. The globalization term used associated with neoliberalism is what people usually think about. Um, Corporate welfare and social welfare may seem um, to the average person as two different things, but and they may appear that it appears on the surface that corporate welfare strictly benefits corporations, and it does, by the way, while social welfare benefits the broader masses, the working class, especially people in need. While that is true, in the end, corporate welfare and social welfare are actually forms of buttressing, supporting the capitalist system in crisis. The capitalist system in deep crisis was actually manifested in the 1930s during the Great Depression, although depressions and recessions are built into capitalism. The capitalist system structurally expands and contracts, hence the built-in recessions in capitalism and periodically every a few decades or so, deep recessions or depressions. Obviously, the latest in our time was the 2008, called the Great Recession of 2008. And were it not for the social welfare system as a social safety net in a great many countries, it would indeed appear that it would have been much, much worse, as it was as was the Great Depression in the 1930s. Um, the corporate welfare system that has been identified with neoliberalism is essentially government bailing out banks in the insurance corporations, providing subsidies to everyone from high tech, like uh, semiconductor companies, for example, as people who follow this know, to providing subsidies to companies that one country may feel is necessary so that its national based company can compete with companies abroad. This is especially evident. It has been especially evident with European and US companies competing in the last 30, 40 years or so with Chinese companies, but also with Japanese companies. Um, this is corporate welfare simply means the public assets, meaning taxpayer money, used, transferred over to the private sector, large corporations, multi-billion dollar, in some cases multi-trillion dollar corporations, receiving public money to sustain themselves, um, as far as they're concerned, and as far as the government is concerned, although they may be making billions, and they are making billions in profits, they still receive this money. So this is a mass transfer of public assets, money from the general taxpayer into the coffers, into the accounts of the large corporations, especially the large corporations. Corporate welfare obviously drains resources from the civilian economy, and it supports um, what is called in economics, vertical economic growth. In other words, the same companies receiving money um, to become even stronger, although not in all cases does this mean that that money is used for productive purposes or efficiently, contrary to the neoliberal um, ideological rhetoric on this issue. The latest example is the large chip maker, US based chip maker Intel, which received billions in corporate subsidies, corporate welfare, in other words, from a number of governments, from the US to Germany to Israel. And they still have such a bad business model that the company's stock was lost half of its value. So that's just an example. Another form of corporate welfare is, of course, companies like Walmart receiving indirectly corporate welfare through social welfare. And this was brought out earlier a few months ago in a Senate hearing by Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont. He pointed out to the executives of the company. This is a company, by the way, whose family's wealth put together is the largest in the world. They're the richest family in the world, well over 300 billion in value. Um, Now, when they don't pay enough money to their workers, they pay below living wage. In other words, what the minimum is required, not because the minimum wage, by the way, does not mean that it's a living wage. For example, if you pay $15 an hour in California or in New York, in many New York City, you're paying poverty wages. So the government then comes in and subsidizes the workers of these companies, which means that indirectly they're subsidized. This is why in my video, and I invite all of you to look at it. In my video, I point out that actually corporate welfare and social welfare are intertwined, are interrelated, and both are actually designed to help the capitalist system. If the capitalist system was healthy, if it were healthy, there would not be a need for corporate for social welfare and corporate welfare. This is indicative that the system is in crisis and that the system requires public money, the money from the general taxpayer, to support these companies and to make them even stronger, by the way. And this concentration, I will conclude with this concentration of capital has been detrimental to the open society, to democracy, because we have seen increasingly in the last 25, 30 years the path toward authoritarianism under the guise of democracy. I invite you to look at the video on social welfare and corporate welfare, write comments, ask questions. I also invite you to subscribe to this channel. This is a channel managed by my good friend Asad Alim. He has done an excellent work. It's an educational channel. It provides interviews, it provides tutorials. The ultimate goal of this channel is the edification of the viewer, to keep the viewer informed with a perspective that is not geared to benefit any specific um, company or group or advocate for any government, or rather it's an independent analysis. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, we'll have another topic. Thank you very much.